Hey everyone, it's vmcampos comic book fan. Welcome to another top 5 video. This time I'm counting the top 5 WTF crossovers of the decade. Now Superman and Spider-Man have crossed over, but that happened in the 70s, so I'm not counting them. And then one day when they both meet Wonder Woman, that'll be the day. But for the moment, we're going to talk about the top 5 crossovers that happened in the 2010s. Starting with number 5, we have Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures, published in 2016 by IDW and DC Comics. Now this was a second in the series that came out because there was first Batman Ninja Turtles, but this is Batman Ninja Turtles Adventures. This is like the cutier, cartoonier version of these characters. This was published in 2016. There was Volume 2 in 2018 and then Volume 3 in 2019. So obviously this series had legs. And it was basically the world of the Ninja Turtles meeting the world of Batman. The particular one that I have here, again, like I said, it's the Adventures version, the cuter Batman the Animated Series, plus the current cartoon at that moment. Batman has been around since 1939, first published by DC Comics, and the Ninja Turtles have been around since 1984, published by Mirage Studios. The writer of this book is Matthew Manning, and the artist is John Somarvia. So it's the cartoony style that was happening at the time. I really like it. It gave me a great sense of the original animated series. Two-Face looks amazing. And it was the Ninja Turtles at that time, which were a little cuter than I ever remember them, but it worked out just fine. And so we've got Clayface, we've got Two-Face, there's an appearance by two laughing villains later on. No spoilers. And this was Batman meeting the Ninja Turtles. They crossed over in dimensions somehow. You know how comics are, they're pretty wacky. So number 5, Batman meets the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures. Number 4, we have Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons, published in 2018 by Oni Press / Adult Swim / Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro. There's a lot of cooks in this kitchen. So basically it's Rick and Morty, created by Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon in 2013 or so. And Dungeons and Dragons, created by Gary Gygax and Dave Aronson all the way back in 1974. There have been 2 volumes of this series published. The second volume, Painscape, is currently being published as of this video. But this comic has basically Rick and Morty going gaga over Dungeons and Dragons. Everyone loves Dungeons & Dragons at that particular point in this dimension, so everyone's playing, but Rick says, hey, let's go play Dungeons & Dragons in real life, not just dice. Hilarity and adventure ensues. There were 4 issues of Volume 1, and Volume 2 will probably also be 4 issues. Volume 1 had Patrick Rothfuss and Jim Zub as the writers, and Troy Little as the artist. Pretty cool adventures. The characters are pretty on-model related to the show, although they're kind of like in a little bit more on-model style of the cartoons. It's funny, it's vulgar, it's Rick and Morty, it's Dungeons and Dragons. It's really nice. There's a part where we actually see character stat sheets, so you can make your perfect Dungeons and Dragons characters from the Sanchez family. Would you like to be Kier Bravian or Lien Amaranthia? The choice is yours. So that's Rick and Morty versus Dungeons and Dragons, published by Oni Press. Number 3, let's get more and more WTF. How about Predator versus Judge Dredd versus Aliens, published by Dark Horse, IDW, Fox, and 2000 AD. Now this was in 2016 when Dark Horse was celebrating their 30th anniversary. They began publishing in 1986. Judge Dredd first began publishing in 1977 in the second prog of the British magazine 2000 AD. Aliens, of course, from 1979, the Ridley Scott film, and Predator from 1987. So these characters have been around a while. Then 2016, they all battled each other. Can you believe it? Well, interior art is pretty cool, and the story is totally bonkers. We've got the Predators, aka the Yautja, coming to the world of 2000 AD. Hey, that's not Rocky Raccoon, is it? Is that Rocksteady? And there's like an evil gene splicer guy that wants to merge the DNA of the predators plus other people, and it's all wacky over the top. Hey, there's Judge Anderson. And so Judge Dredd is in this, and he's like, drop it, creep, you're coming with me, and so forth. So it's just totally bonkers tale about these three properties. Raise your hand if you know Judge Dredd. Raise your hand if you know The Predator. And raise your hand if you know Aliens. Of course you do. They have been around for decades. But have you ever seen them battle each other? I think not. So I picked for number 3, Predator vs. Judge Dredd vs. Aliens. Pretty epic art by Chris Mooneyham, written by John Layman. Cover by Glenn Fabry, who did various Preacher covers. And there were 4 issues of this comic. I got one of the variant covers, as I am wont to do. So number 3, Predator vs. Judge Dredd vs. Aliens. Number 2, The Twilight Zone and the Shadow is by Dynamite Entertainment. The Shadow's been around since the 1930s. He was first a radio personality from 1930, and then printed in the pulp magazines of 1931, predating Batman, a wealthy socialite who fights crime by night. That sounds familiar. Plagiarism. And The Twilight Zone's been around since 1959, created by Rod Serling. This was a 4-issue series. Fuck you, Nazis. And we've got David Avallone and Dave Acosta on the duties here, and they also worked on the recent Elvira comic, which has been really fun. And here we have the Shadow breaking up a Nazi party, killing them all. I totally approve of that. Look at that headshot. Take that, Nazi. And this story is mixing his current time with then some omniscient Rod Serling narration of him waking up, but he's the Shadow and he's not the Shadow at the same time. He's the alter ego and the Shadow at the same time. Just a lot of weird stuff happens, but he accepts it like, yeah, no problem. And stuff happens where we have various bad guys up to no good, shifting timelines and so forth. It's really wacky. This was a 4-issue miniseries, a very trippy story, mixing up the Twilight Zone with this hard-boiled character. Amazing covers by Francesco Francavilla. I really get a sense of the Twilight Zone in the cover, but a little bit less in the actual story. But it still had me like, WTF. And the number 1 WTF comic of the decade is Red Sonja and Vampirella Meet Betty and Veronica, published in 2019 by Dynamite/Archie Comics. Where to begin on this? Yeah, that's Betty and Veronica. Betty Cooper, Veronica Lodge, the Archie characters. Betty first appearing in Pep Comics number 22 in 1941. Veronica a year later in 1942. They've been Archie's pals for decades upon decades. Later on in 1969, Vampirella, Scion of Draculon, was published in the first issue of Vampirella number 1, 1969, by Warren Magazines, designed by Forrest J. Ackerman and Trina Robbins. And then later on, the youngest of the group is Red Sonja. Interesting about her, I'm only counting the comic appearances, so 1973 from Marvel, Conan the Barbarian number 23, but there were Robert E. Howard versions since the 30s. We'll keep it easy and start with the comic version. So yeah, here we have a beautiful Faye Dalton cover, interior art by Marisa Sanapo and writer Amy Chu. She also worked on Red Sonja over at Dynamite. And this is basically a story of Red Sonja and Vampirella teaming up to come visit Riverdale because there's an evil vampiric cult that is doing bad stuff. So it's this like hilarious clash of these like old world heroines, these badass heroines with the sweet Betty and Veronica. And well, Vampy and Red needs to infiltrate Riverdale High, so they dress up like high schoolers. Although Betty remarks, I think they look a little old to be in high school. Veronica, oh Betty, they're from Europe. Everyone looks more mature over there. And Red Sonja fits in very well with the football team, whereas Vampirella is a great cheerleader. There's a hilarious part where Archie tries to interject, "Hey Veronica, who are your friends?" Red Sonja replies, "What business is that of yours, boy?" He shrinks, "None, I guess." Further, a fellow redhead, "Yet I already find him annoying. Who is he?" Betty, "That's our friend Archie, but this is our story, not his." So it's a pretty funny story. It's a pretty WTF. Amazing covers by Faye Dalton, and just continuing this WTF story about like vampires in Riverdale, and Red Sonja's a quarterback and Vampirella's a cheerleader. So pretty amazing covers. Also, Laura Braga does some stupendous covers in her style. This has been a very enjoyable series. It's gone on for 6 issues so far. They took a little hiatus with issue number 6, but then as of this video, they're back in like the second plot of things. No spoilers, but it looks like we're visiting Draculon with issue number 7. Again, another amazing Laura Braga cover. And this is the #1 WTF comic of the 2010s. Fight me. It's like Betty and Veronica and Red Sonja and Vampirella? Queens. There is nothing else that is more WTF than Red Sonja, Vampirella, Betty, and Veronica, except maybe Archie versus Predator. That's really over the top, like the Predator versus the Archie world. That can't get more WTF than that. Not even more than Archie versus Sharknado, the viral movie sensation versus Archie. That can't get any worse than that. And definitely not by Archie meets the Ramones. I don't think nothing could top anything that I had on my regular top list. What do you think? So those were the top 5 WTF crossover comics of the 2010s. There's plenty more that exist, of course, but I want to hear your opinion. Tell me down there on the description, which ones did I miss? There were so many to choose from. But these were the 5 that I picked, therefore they are the correct ones. I'll still listen to your opinion down there on the comments, so let me have it. What were the top WTF comics of the 2010s? Let me know. This has been VM Campos, and I'll see you in the next top 5.